I do want to stick with COVID for a moment more. It wasn't so long ago that Sweden was an international pariah. You see, according to the experts, the politicians and the media, as I've been talking about, the Swedish government was effectively killing their people for refusing to follow the COVID science. Well, libertarian think tank the Cato Institute has now published a paper examining the impact of the Swedish approach versus the impact of the more scientific approach in other countries. Well, the findings are a damning indictment on the coercive and corrupt policies and practices masquerading as science during the COVID period. Here's what the Cato paper found. Sweden stood out from other countries, stubbornly refusing lockdowns, school closures and mask mandates. Sweden's economy got through the pandemic better than comparable countries, and elementary school students have not suffered learning losses. These benefits do not seem to have come at the expense of human health. Remarkably, total excess deaths were smaller in Sweden than in any other European country during the 3 pandemic years, 2020 to 2022, and the rate was less than half of America's. Now, according to the paper, the Swedes adopted a path of personal responsibility and voluntary compliance, with government recommendations on social distancing, working remotely, avoiding non-essential travel, and staying indoors if they felt sick. And at the time, then Swedish Minister Stefan Löfven said, I quote, "We will never be able to legislate about everything. We will never be able to ban all harmful behaviour. Now, it is actually more a matter of common sense. There is an individual responsibility, and every individual has to take responsibility for themselves, for their fellow people, and their country," end quote. How refreshing it is to hear words like that from any world leader. But of course, Löfven's government was roundly condemned for their liberty-loving approach by the clueless and complicit authoritarian leaders in the Western world. Actually, come to think of it, I'm not sure all of them were clueless. You see, the decision to curtail freedom and suspend time-honoured rights in favour of a confected crisis had to start somewhere. And right now, all roads seem to lead to the World Economic Forum-inspired Dr. Anthony Fauci, who repeatedly lied about the pandemic, he lied about the protocols, he lied about the mortality, and he lied about the vaccines. Now, the clueless ones around the world didn't ask any questions. They just followed along, and that includes our own government in Australia. The Swedish approach, I got to say, it wasn't entirely self-directed individualism. People like me would still insist, and do, that the Swedes overreacted to what is now considered a flu-like virus. But compared to other countries, they were an absolute standout positive outlier. The Swedes focused on protecting the most vulnerable, while not trampling all over the individual self-determination and personal responsibility that have been and should remain the hallmarks of Western civilisation. That our political representatives have strayed so far from that path, and that so many citizens willingly accepted the authoritarian state, actually says a lot about our country. And I have to say, it's now fascinating to hear so many people who have a public voice proclaim to have always been against vaccine mandates and the coercive COVID measures. Well, in many cases, I recall them condemning Sweden. They condemn the unvaccinated and they condemn the uncooperative as dangers to humanity and worse. Now they want us to forget. Incredibly, I know that many people will forget. But to me, the failure of those in positions of public prominence to actually speak up, to speak truth to power in the face of such overwhelming evidence of misuse of science and political authority is absolutely unforgivable. And so, while some may choose to forgive, we should never forget or trust those who are part of history's most significant public policy deception.